welcome to Blues Talking, the preface to the evening show at Henry's Blueshouse. Today we're going to talk to a man who's been around the music scene for quite a long time. In fact, I learned tonight a lot longer than I would have imagined because his parents were pretty much immersed in the music business anyway. Funnily enough, I will mention at the beginning, I used to work for the same publication as his dad, Vic Wakelin, and called Midland Beat. If he got as badly paid as I did, then, well, anyway, it was fun, and it's consigned to history. It's a very important reference publication. But please, tonight, I'd like to welcome Smokin Ade Wakelin. You know smoking got allowed in pubs, don't you?
Yes, I do. It's now non-smoking aid.
So right at the beginning, when did you first stumble onto or introduced to this wonderful music?
Well, I think, unusually, I think actually my musical experience probably started before I was born. I came from a family that was very much into music. They weren't necessarily musicians, but they liked their music. My father was actually named after Beethoven. His middle name was Ludwig. And very much a bohemian family, and his mother, my grandmother, was a journalist, and in fact in 1949, some time before I was born, she had the foresight to host Paul Robeson at a house party at the family home in Gough Road, Edgeworthstown, when Paul Robeson came over for a tour where he played Wolverhampton and Birmingham Town Hall. So I still got the programmes, and lovely autographs of everybody who was at the party in 1949.
How many people are there?
Well, I haven't counted them, but there's Paul Robeson's signature. There's my mum, lots of love and kisses from Peggy, my mum.
Looks like about 30 people.
I think so. So it was kind of, the music thing was sort of in the family before I was even born. I was born in 55, and by the time I was about 8 or 9 years old, my father, you mentioned, Vic Wakelin, he was sort of involved a little bit in the music industry. As he said, he was involved with the paper Midland Beat, which I think, was that based in Wake Green Road in those days?
Yes, with Dennis Dedridge.
Yep. And he became the manager of a band initially called the Vandells. They changed their name to the Brum Beats. So we're talking about 1963-64. And I think that happened because one of the lads in the band was working in a factory he managed. He was in industry for his day job. But of course, they used to rehearse in the cellar of our old house in Gough Road. Big old house, cellar room with lots of egg boxes and cardboard. And I'm 8 or 9 years old, and there's this rhythm and blues band rehearsing in the cellar. So it really gets into your blood. And of course, the band leader was somebody you know very well, was Norman Haynes.
Yes.
And so I got my first guitar Christmas when I was 9, and Norman taught me a few chords. I learnt the various songs that people learn, the House of the Rising Sun, Sloop John B, all those sort of things. And that kind of, got me playing, and I loved it, absolutely loved it.
So you didn't really stand a chance?
It was absolutely no hope.
Did you ever get a proper job?
I beg pardon?
Did you ever get a proper job?
Oh, eventually, yeah. I've done all sorts of things in the motor trade and in business. I was in recruitment for a long time, but we won't talk about that.
That's okay with me. So, apart from the Brum Beats, there were 2 Brum Beats. Did you know that?
There were 2 Brum Beats. The dad's Brum Beats was 2 words, Brum Beats, and there was a Brum Beats which was 1 word, and that was the Brum Beats with Roger Hill. The dad's Brum Beats with Norman Haynes, John Hancock's on drums, yes. Terry Dawes, I think, on bass, and a variety of other people. I seem to remember there was, I can't remember, Hill, another Graham was playing guitar for a while, and people came and went through the band, but Norman was initially on guitar, Norman Haynes, and then he went on to organ.
So when you had become accustomed to music, did you start buying records from the beginning, or were you a bit young at 9?
Well, as you probably know, Norman worked in a record shop in Smethwick.
That's right.
And when he came round to the rehearsals at the house, he'd come on his scooter, and he would always have a range of records on the back of his scooter, so there's always music in the house. And in fact, one of the songs that Brum did, which was one of my mum's favourite, was St James Infirmary Blues, and I wanted a copy of that. And we found a copy on a Louis Armstrong album. So my first blues record, which I had on my 13th birthday, 1968, is this one, Town Hall Concert Plus, Louis Armstrong, live in New York, 1947. And so it was actually a trumpet album rather than a guitar record.
And didn't Jack Teagle do the vocal on St James Infirmary? Not Lewis.
I don't know.
He did.
You might. I'm sure you're better informed than I am, Jim.
That's great. What a great way to start.
But around this time, even before this was my 13th birthday, when I was 12, I had also been listening to John Mayall and the Bluesmakers, and I played a little bit of harmonica at the time. And again, I mentioned my grandmother was a journalist, and she had a professional little reel-to-reel recording machine, and she would record myself and my sisters singing and doing stuff. And I've still got a copy of a recording of me at 12 years old doing Parchman's Farm, just me playing harmonica and singing, and doing My Babe, playing guitar and singing at 12 years old. So, you know, it was a kind of...
So who did discover My Babe would have been Walter? Little Walter would have heard his version.
I would have thought so, yeah.
But Parchman's Farm? Not Mose Allison then, was it?
No, but he wrote it, I think, but it was a John Mayall version.
Oh, I see.
And John Mayall did it with just a harmonica and percussion, I think. And that's either because you couldn't hear the guitars in the mix or they weren't there. But I've heard it recently, and it's just harmonica and vocal, and it's got that lovely sort of driving beat.
Because that was a sort of song really that was a reflection of the field holders, which would have been done that way.
Of course.
So, the fateful day you went to a record store, clutching your 5 shillings and sixpence. What did you buy?
Well, I think after the John Mayall thing, and with John Mayall, I was introduced to people like Peter Green, Jeff Beck, and Eric Clapton, of course. I already knew about Louis Armstrong, and through the English guitarists, I then discovered they were talking about people like Muddy Waters and Freddie King and Albert King, of course, and BB. So my sort of musical journey went back. It started in America, came over here, then went back over to the States, and I started to look up these people that were influencing people like Peter Green and Eric Clapton. But then they start talking about people like T-Bone Walker and Charlie Christian, and so you go back and you go back. So it was quite unusual because at school, most of my school pals were into sport and football and all this. I was into music. I did go through my sort of progressive period in the late 60s, very much into Cream, obviously with Eric Clapton, and of course Jimi Hendrix, who I kind of see as that link between the blues and rock. He kind of made it okay to go a little bit beyond and push things a little bit. So I was buying Cream albums and Hendrix albums when they were coming out in the late 60s.
Very personal question here. Did you buy Black Sabbath?
Funnily enough, I don't know if you read my post on Facebook today. Somebody mentioned Black Sabbath, and I did get, I think when I was about 14 or 15, Paranoid album. I played it once, it gave me nightmares, and I gave it away. Seriously, I had nightmares, and I gave it away. So it wasn't quite my cup of tea, I'm afraid, Jim. But I know you had a hand in there somewhere.
Well, actually, they came out of being a blues band.
Of course, yeah. As did many of the bands, Sabbath and Sabbath, of course, and Zeppelin and all the rest of them.
And Hendrix were one of the most definable influences on Sabbath.
Yes.
So, well, when did you first play in public?
My first public gig I remember well was I was at art school. Went to
in Birmingham?
In Birmingham, went to Bourneville Art School straight from secondary school. And because my birthday is on the beginning of September, I was always the youngest in my year. So I was only 16, doing an A-level course. And teamed up with a chap, and I can't for the life of me remember his name, but he went on to form a band called Fashion. And we did a duo where he was the sort of front man, singer, acoustic, and I was playing lead breaks. I was always wanted to be, and I always was, a lead guitarist. And we used to play in the cellar bars in pubs around the college and Selly Oak. And so I did my first public gig, I think, at 16. And then really just sort of carried on. I was in a band by the time I was 17, although the first few gigs were social club gigs really, they weren't anything special. But the first sort of proper, as I call a proper band, was in the sort of mid-late 70s, which was a Birmingham band called the Spliffs, of all things.
Was that a blues band?
Not really, it was blues influenced, but this was late 70s, and it kind of, it was all sorts of things really. It was a bit odd. It was one of those bands where every member thought it was a different band. Somebody thought it was a ska band, and so we did a bit of ska. I quite like that sort of J.J. Cale, Tony Joe White, laid back sort of guitar stuff, so I was doing that sort of stuff. There was a bit of rock, and you know, we did the circuit. We did all the pubs and the colleges and whatever.
Now, your father ran an agency as well, I believe. Am I right or wrong? A booking agency for artists, for musicians, I mean.
Not in the same way that you run an established business, I don't think. He set up the Brum Beats as a limited company, and he was very well organised in that sense. And I've got all the memorabilia. After he died, we, you know, and it was a limited company. It was he was running it, and I think he may have got involved in booking other bands as well, on the basis that most managers and promoters end up, you know, they get an inquiry they can't fulfil, they say, I'll get you a band, it takes off a little bit. So I think there was a little bit of that, but I don't think he set up an established agency in the sense that you've got your business.
So did you gig around with other bands before you decided to form your own, or did you take the leap early?
I think I was always very much a sideman on guitar. In the late 70s, a band called the Spliffs, and we recorded some demo stuff at Bob Lamb's Cambridge Road studio. And
is that where UB40 recorded?
Yeah, and in fact, I mean, popular legend will have you believe that UB40 were the first people to record there, but I actually helped Bob build his drum booth. I built the drum booth there because I had tools and drills and things, and in return he gave me some studio time. So we were the first.
Great.
And in fact, Bob's playing drums on some of the tracks. They were just demo tracks.
Do you know there's a link between Bob and Norman Hayes?
Yes, Locomotive, of course,
yes.
and you, indeed, because you were in playing Locomotive, and I'm aware that you also played trumpet a couple of times with the Brum Beats.
Oh yeah.
Standing there, back in the day. So our paths would have crossed. You know, I can well remember your little MG TF or whatever it was, and you were taking promotional photographs of the band, and the dad would bring me along, you know.
It breaks my heart. 1954 MGTF 1250. It was beautiful. Anyway,
I've got some pictures. I'll look them out for you. I couldn't find them for tonight because I don't. They're in boxes somewhere, but I will look them out for you, Jim. I'll bring them by. But no. So after the Spliffs in the 80s, I joined Bob Boucher. He'd left. He'd been with Hooker and Mean Street Dealers. He started a band in the 80s called No Spring Chicken, which I joined, and I was again a sideman guitarist, and we were doing all the usual colleges, clubs, gigs, pubs, whatever. And when that band fell apart in the sort of late 80s, yet again through, you know, hissy fits of various people and you know, all the the singer sort of storming off and all that sort of stuff. That's when I decided actually I'd be better off playing and fronting my own outfit, and that's when I kind of thought, well, actually blues is where I started, and so I went back to the blues, and I actually started what I then called the Smokin Blues Band, which is where the name came from.
Right. And when was that?
I started gigging in 1991 doing that.
Great.
So it feels relatively recently, but it's actually probably quite a long time ago.
So who was in the band? Anyone
Again, because it was a blues band, as you'll appreciate, the rhythm sections kind of came and went, and it was who was available. I played quite a bit with a chap called Nick Cleverley.
Remember him, yeah.
Yeah. He had his own band called Red House, great guitar player. A chap called Nigel Smithson on drums quite often, who's sadly no longer with us. and various bass players. And there was a chap who was with me in the Spliffs. He played bass with me for most of the time until he moved away. But it depended on who was available. That was a classic 2 guitars, bass and drums band. What I tend to do now, what I like now, is Hammond organ, guitar, bass, drums. That's my favourite lineup. Bearing in mind it was an organ player, Norman Haynes, who taught me to play guitar. I've always liked that sort of Jimmy Smith feel and sound, and I like that sort of juxtaposition of the guitar and the Hammond. There's 2 very distinct instruments, I love it.
Absolutely. And you no longer have to carry the darn Bs or the C3s upstairs anymore. They're
absolutely
on the keyboards again.
Absolutely.
I've seen listed as your drummer on occasion. Me.
There is another Jim Simpson,
oh,
as I'm sure you're aware. There's a young chap called Jim Simpson who used to be in Magnum.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And various other bands. I can't think of those. He'd been in one or 2 of the bigger rock type bands. But yeah, Jim Simpson, I played with him many times over the years.
He's a good player. I always thought he a lot more than he got.
And at the moment, I'm working with an organ player, a chap called Paul Kulas, who
Cool-ass.
Kulas.
I like CO.
No. Yeah. So and he plays. I can't remember the name of it, but it's an Italian. It's a double manual. It's a Hammond type of thing. But it's not a Hammond, but it's a bit lighter to carry around. But it is a proper organ with drawbars and so forth. And really, bass and drums. It's who's available. What I'm listening to now is people like Ronnie Earl and Jimmy Vaughan, that sort of Texas shuffle. I love the shuffle rhythm. Going back to the early 60s, when the music and the blues came over here, there weren't many British drummers that could shuffle properly. Mick Fleetwood could, 1 or 2 others, but the British drummers were very much on the beats, I'm sure you're aware, whereas the American guys, they came out of jazz, they came out of swing, they could swing it and they just had that lovely shuffle. And when I hear that now, you just can't stand still with people playing a good shuffle. And that's what I aspire to now, to get lovely shuffles coming out of the band.
When did you first hear American bluesmen?
Well, it does go back to, I suppose, the late 60s, because I was fairly quickly listening to Muddy Waters and...
Did you see any of those Little and Row American Blues Caravan tours?
No.
Muddy and show.
No, I was probably just a little bit young I was listening to this stuff when I was 12, 13 years old and, that sort of age. I wasn't really going out to gigs. I did see Muddy Waters once when he came over, and I've seen Freddie King B.B. King and Albert King. Never saw Freddie, although Freddie's one of my favourite guitar players. And if you listen to Freddie King, of course,
he's the king of shuffle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But also, what you hear, everything Eric Clapton ever played was straight from Freddie King. And to be fair to Eric, he does acknowledge it, but it's not that original.
Well, a lot of people I talk to, even people similar age to you, seem to think the blues began with Jeff Beck. And they do go back a little further than that.
Well, one of the things I learned quite early on, particularly listening to this, bearing in mind I got this in '68, and it was recorded in '47, I understood that actually you have to go back, and I think I understood quite early on from listening to John Mayall, he was crediting the original players. He was acknowledging, saying, this isn't our music, this is music from America, and encouraging people to look back and go back and find out where this came from. And I think, and that story is well told about the way that the British musicians, in a way, helped the American players to actually become known in their own country, which was,
absolutely
quite tragic, and in the way that that they were still segregated somewhat, and so I think I always understood that. I always understood that this was something from somewhere else. I understood that Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac was very much Elmore James. It wasn't, and that's fine. It was okay. Although there'd be many times where I think to myself, well, what does a white boy from Edgbaston have any right to play blues music for? I have no idea. So I sometimes have those little moments.
Well, I think it's important to sustain the style. I mean, there aren't many great Americans left anymore.
Well, that's true. That's true. And I suppose when you think of things like classical music, and I do like classical and opera, and I like a whole range of music.
You don't talk about classical with Henry's. Classical music with Elmore James and Robert Johnson.
Well, exactly. but the point is, when we go to see the CBSO, they are a covers band covering Beethoven or Mozart or whatever. That's all they are. And I see it that way. So
that's great. So one thing seems to be clear, and you've not actually said this. Your repertoire, is it generally non-original songs, i.e. not songs that you've written?
Oh no, I probably about, I don't know, 20 maybe 30% of my set is original.
I would have thought more from the way you thought.
Some of which are blues songs, which are very much in the traditional style. And I find blues songs aren't that difficult to write, to be honest. I mean, you have to be in the right frame of mind. But
your grammar's far too good to write a blues song.
Okay, that's interesting. But and I don't just play blues. My set is sort of blues influenced and blues inspired. But there's hints of all sorts. When I say all sorts, moving off of it, I've mentioned people like J.J. Cale, for example. And I quite like some country feel, but country blues maybe, or even blues country if there's such a thing, I don't know. So yes, I do covers, and I'm very keen to make sure that I credit and acknowledge the original writers. You mentioned about Jeff Beck. I get very frustrated when I see a band announcing they're going to play such and such a song by Gary Moore, and I'm going, no, that's an Albert King song, or a Jimmy Rogers song. Get it right. It's because we're trading on, we're keeping it going, but we're also trading on the work that these people put in. It's their art.
And most of them made very little out of it in their life, so at least if they get some ongoing immortality,
yes,
it's slightly compensated.
And it's respect as well.
So what's your next move? Are you recording? You did record, you made an album.
My last album was recorded back in 2010, which I also did with Bob Lamb at Highbury Studios, and he's playing drums on it. That's an album called Going Down That Road, which talks about, and that song, it really summarises in 3 minutes what we've been discussing about the fact that, I was listening to music at 9 and, and I'm sort of now wanting to go down that road again and play blues and go back to where I started from.
Was that your first album?
No, I did a live album some 10 years before that, and we did an album with the Spliffs, but that was never released. That was recorded and never really found a...
See, right now that could be very interesting.
Yeah.
Because people are digging right back in the archives.
Well, I've got the master tapes of the old Spliffs, and I have threatened one day to... I've spoken with Toby Wilson about maybe putting it back together some way and maybe getting rid of the hiss and.
Toby's got a baking oven because
yes.
Old tape. If you want to, this. If you want to transfer it digitally, you're going to bake it first.
That always scared me because when I did physics at school, when you heat something magnetic, you destroy the magnetism. So I was always frightened about baking. But people, yes, you're right. People bake the tapes.
We bake lots of old stuff. Yes, we've had no disasters. I was expecting to be one. It's worthwhile doing.
But I've been out of it a little bit because at the end of last year I had a major operation, and that kind of has taken me. So I haven't really been gigging now for about 6 months. I'm missing it now, and I want to get playing again. My health is back on on track. I've got some gigs booked later in this year, in a few local venues, and I'm going to get playing again as soon as possible now, Jim.
Have you considered recording? What you might want to do now you've got 2 albums and the Spliffs behind you. Why don't you do a compilation of all 3?
Possibly. I mean, one of the things I'd like to do is an all-original album. My current CD that I'm selling has got 1 original track on, this track Going Down the Road, and the rest is covers. I would very much like to do a completely original album, which would actually include some of the songs, but redone, as I used to do in the Spliff. There's a couple of good songs that I really enjoy doing. I've got plenty of material. I've got far more material written than I actually include in my set at the moment. I've even been writing while I've been recovering, so I've written a couple of songs in the last 6 months. So I would like to do another album, but I think I'd like to do a 100% original album. So yeah, it's just the process and the logistics, and as ever, the money.
And faced with the prospect of not actually selling any records on my gigs, it's tough going, isn't it?
It is, but I think we do this because we love it. I think if we would, you probably know that the music world isn't necessarily. It can be very lucrative for a very, very few people, but we do it because it's our passion.
You talk about Albert and Freddie and BB, of course, and you referred to T-Bone. Out of all of them, which are those old blues guys? I keep going back to the old blues guys because they're the essence. Which one of those, if it was possible to hear today, would you cross the street to see?
Well, obviously I'd cross the street to see any and all of them, as you well know. People often ask me, who's your favourite and who's the best, and I can't answer that because it's, they are all good in their own right. They are. I'm certainly going back to people. You mentioned T-Bone and even Charlie Christian. I know he sort of came out to swing and jazz, but he was the one who said it's okay for an electric guitar to be a lead instrument. That was really when it was starting. I think the band's all right.
It's not you being hungry, no.
No. So yeah, I don't know. It's a very difficult question, Jim, because they are all so good, and it also depends on your mood, I think, at the time. But
I don't know. Somebody must scream at you. Muddy waters for me every time.
Well, okay. If you put a gun in my head and I had to pick one, it would be Freddie King. He was just a wonderful, wonderful player, big showman, great music, great shuffles. So yeah, I think if I had to really pick one, Freddie King would be the main.
Right. Now, today, what was around today in Brum? Which band would you prefer to go and see if you could choose one? I don't think it's a good choice here.
When we say band, you mean band or artist?
Either.
Yeah. Somebody I'd love to see, and he's getting older now, is a chap called Ronnie Earl. He
broadcasters.
Yeah, broadcasters. Before that, he was in the Thunderbirds, Fabulous Thunderbirds, and I see the Fabulous Thunderbirds as a sort of American John Mayall blues breakers. Everybody's been through it, and then they move on somewhere else. Jimmy Vaughan was in the Thunderbirds, and I love Ronnie Earl's playing. I like his playing probably from 20 years ago though, when he was, obviously a bit young, a bit more energy. He's getting on it, but I haven't seen him. I've seen Jimmy Vaughan, and I love his playing. And I was never taken by his younger brother, Stevie Ray Vaughan. A lot of people, he was very big and a lot of people enjoyed his playing, but I always found it a little bit too flash, bit too derivative of Jimi Hendrix.
I was going to say, as a Hendrix fan, I would have thought you'd have gone for it. Or was it sub-Hendrix? That's the problem.
Well, the problem is, if you like someone like Hendrix, you don't really want to see somebody doing a half-baked job of Hendrix. And I know people criticise me for saying Stevie Ray Vaughan was half-baked, but he was brilliant. But his brother Jimmy is just so different, so laid back, plays so few notes, but make them all count.
Were you aware that the Fabulous Thunderbirds played at the pub in Digworth?
Yeah, Barrel Organ, yeah. I missed that. I played there a lot. I didn't go to
that show, man.
Yeah, no, I wasn't at that show. I'm aware they played there. I saw them some nearly 20 years ago in New York at BB King's Club, which was
so what great. Were you doing in New York?
That's another story. I went over with my family and my kids. My kids were probably about 9 or 10 years old. And sadly, it was a month after 9/11, and it was half term. The kids were off, and people in New York were saying, people were asking, how can we help? And people saying, come and visit us. Don't stop coming to. And hotels were empty, flights were cheap. So across the event, and I had a great time. Went to BB King's Club, went down to Greenwich Village, saw a chap called Little Freddie King, who you may have heard of.
Yeah, I heard of it. I know nothing about it.
He's not got no relation. A great old blues guy, proper old blues guy, very much in the mould of John Lee Hooker, in that he doesn't play 12 bars or 16 bars or 8 bars. He just changes when he wants to change, and the band watch him like a hawk. And he's just sitting there tapping his feet, playing proper old from Mississippi, you know. So yeah, so that's, and I saw Jimmy Vaughan happened to be playing at BB's.
Who?
Jimmy Vaughan happened to be playing at BB's club, so that's when I saw Jimmy. But I'm aware that he has toured and he, you know, still does.
Well, that was very interesting. Thank you very much.
Jim, thank you.